today's video we're going to be talking about ball striking. I'm going to be talking about the sequence in the downswing that is going to give you the ability to deliver the club and get the hands ahead of the club head coming in towards the impact area. And this is a really, really important thing, because getting the hands delivered ahead of the club head, not only does it give you club face stability, as opposed to, you know, the kind of club head overtaking the hands, what it also does is it gives you that ability to control the loft on the club. And what happens for most amateur golfers is that they deliver the club head ahead of the hands, which presents more loft to the club. And it also plays havoc with the contact. It makes you very vulnerable of hitting the ground behind the ball, so you start doing things like fatting shots and equally thinning shots. And what gets even more messy is then golfers start doing things by like trying to get the head to cover the ball, and all this does then is this makes you kind of get a bit upper body rotational and end up swinging across the ball and with presenting additional loft, and all of a sudden, you know, all you're doing is just putting a tremendous amount of curvature on the ball as well as presenting it with loft, and you just lose all the distance. So what I want to do today is I'm going to really sort of focus on what it is that you need to be able to do to be able to deliver a good impact position. I'm going to give you a real simple drill so you can just go away and work on that as well. So to keep it really simple, if we've got a professional golfer who has the ability at impact to deliver the hands ahead of the ball, and we've got an amateur golfer who delivers the handle behind the ball, or if you like vertical relative to the ball, then the main issue we could measure from the trail arm. So the professional golfer, the trail arm would still be bent and the hand would be ahead, and for the amateur golfer the trail arm would be straight. And really, again, the simplicity is just to look at the trail shoulder. So what we tend to see with the professional golfer, if I put both my hands on now, is we tend to see the trail shoulder getting much lower to the ground, and what we tend to see with more amateur golfers is the trail shoulder more up, like so. And that's going to play massive havoc on that sequence of events. So what we need to do is we need to first of all understand, well, how do you get the trail shoulder coming down? And the answer to this is just linear motion. So if I keep my head still or steady, okay, so maybe not perfectly still, and I just allow my pelvis to sway from side to side, what we can see is, particularly if I hold the through swing part of it, so if I kind of sway my pelvis to the side, so basically my lead hip is located over my ankle line, what happens is that, well, the pelvis will become tilted because of this type of motion. Okay, so as opposed to at this point in time it would be horizontal, this point in time becomes more tilted. Well, that will also tilt the spine, because my intention has been to keep my head still. Now, what we can see is by simply moving the pelvis in a more linear fashion, so moving it from left to right, or from my perspective, right to left in the golf swing, what this does is it drops the shoulder down. So if you're the kind of golfer who is sort of moving more this way, so the right shoulder stays up, or your trail shoulder stays up instead of dropping down, then the first thing to note is that you basically don't have enough linear motion, and you need to just experiment with more of a feeling of moving in towards that lead side. That's key tip number one. So hypothetically, what that would now do is, if I take hold of the club, this means that I can deliver the hands forward by simply just moving my pelvis towards that lead side. And as you experiment with that, you'll be able to, you'll be able to feel that. Now, the reason why that quite simply won't just work on its own, and we talked about this in a most recent upload, is something known as swing direction. Now, another way we can think about this is just swing plane. So if I was going to face you guys, I can't quite simply just drop the shoulder down and move the pelvis to the left, because the club needs to work around the body on an arc. If I sort of try and get my hands just going forward with just the understanding of the linear and the tilting motion, what this will do is this will just present the hosel of the club, and it won't necessarily help actually at all. So this is where rotational movement comes in. So when we see professional golfers demonstrate hands forward and they look like so, what they're basically doing is they're navigating the correct amount of linear and rotational movement in the golf swing. And what this starts to do is this is going to make the big difference towards this impact position. So theoretically, so far, those are the two things that we need to know. We need to know linear and rotational motion is going to produce that impact position. This drill should help just simplify things a little bit for you. You can use an alignment stick. I'm just using this one more for effect. Now, if I sort of hold this across, so lead hand only, and I'm going to hold it across my sternum like so, and I'm going to keep it very close to my chest. And then I'm just going to take my trail hand, I'm just going to position it about a 90-degree angle like this. Now, if you don't quite have the range of motion to move your trail arm like that, then just move it in front of the cane, and again, try and keep it as close to the alignment stick as you possibly can. Now, the simplicity is that we are not going to be doing, and this will become clear in a moment, we're not going to be doing anything, any movement past the ball. We're not going to be moving this way. Everything is going to be pre, okay? And we'll explain as to why as this session goes on. So all we're trying to look for in this drill is to get the pointer down in the direction towards the ball. So if I sort of demonstrate, so I might swing back a little bit, and then here I am like this, like so. Now, again, if I sort of just move from this side on perspective, we can see like so. See the way I'm getting that pointer down towards the golf ball. So I'm basically rehearsing that. So I'm pointing that pointer opposite my trail foot, and it's pointing on my target line. So I'll just show you again from this perspective, like so. Now, this is giving me that sort of pre-delivery position. So if I sort of take this position here, and now I let my lead hand join my trail hand, that gets me into this position. And this is basically the key thing. Now, if we just sort of talk about the reason why you can't go past the ball for a moment before we sort of talk about it, to put it all together, because this is what I tend to think happens for a lot of amateur golfers, is that you understand a lot of this sort of stuff and you've tried it before, but with a lot of lessons that I tend to see, what happens with golfers is they end up sort of moving more this way, okay? So this is me theoretically trying to do the same thing. I'm still trying to trigger the rotation and move to the left, but can you see the way that the head moves in this sort of direction? And when we move this way, you see the right shoulder comes over instead of the right shoulder coming down. And this is where your tilting motion becomes very, very important in the golf swing. So excuse the angle, but I think it possibly will help some of you. So if we sort of place the dot through the center of my spine and through the center of my hips, and I just put my hands across my shoulders here, what we don't want to do in the downswing is get the upper part moving like so, okay? Because this is going to make that shoulder stay high and up and over. What we need to do is we need to make sure as we move the lower body, it's acceptable to move the upper body as well, but you see the way they've got to try and stay much more in line, like so. Now, this is the kind of motion that we are after. This is what's giving us that ability to drop that trail shoulder down towards the golf ball, and what we don't want to be doing is moving in this sort of capacity here. So how do you put that together? So if I go back to the club, put the club across my shoulders about a 90-degree angle, and I point it down towards off my trail foot, and then I take hold. This is again that sort of pre-delivery position. What you've got to bear in mind is what would happen in the golf swing is there would be a natural amount of uncocking and there'd be a natural amount of rotation to kind of get as close to the ball as we continue to just push that club through. So when we're coming down into the golf swing in the sequence is very much navigating the correct amount of linear and rotational movement and clearing those hips out of the way. And then that's it. And then we've got to let the hands and arms do their thing before we then come up through that hitting area again. What we don't want to do is start thinking we've got to keep rotating at the bottom part of the golf swing. And that's why I think on the channel I talk a lot about these sort of angles and these drills, because I know they make the biggest difference to the students that I get the chance to work with. So if you are somebody who has forever struggled to deliver the handle ahead of the club, then what you need to do is you need to understand the sole focus is getting the trail shoulder more down to the ground, and that's navigating linear motion and rotational motion. And I think if you can practice that drill to give you the feeling of how to bring that club down in towards the downswing, then that's just going to give you that feeling for dropping that club down, and then from there start to work on that sort of forearm rotation at the bottom part of the swing to square the face. That's going to give you a much better impact position. So you just need to make sure that you don't make that common mistake that amateur golfers do, which is this way. Trail shoulder over, that's a swing killer. It's got to drop more downward, and that drill should help you out in a big way. See you soon.